Tatum the drive. Tatum the finish.
It is Baylor 18. The mission commanding is mission accomplished.
What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another episode of You Got Boston, live from Las Vegas. This is my first podcast from Las Vegas. It has been a very busy week or so, so I'm going to be recapping a lot of kind of what I've observed on the ground here through the first 4 games of Summer League, and then also discuss a feature that I put out this morning about the Summer League head coach, Matt Reynolds, which you can check out on Celtics blog as well. And as always, I'm going to be taking in live questions in the chat, so feel free to put in any questions you might have about Summer League, about any of the players, about Ugo Gonzalez and his acclimation, about the other guys in the roster that are not necessarily going to be on the Celtics, but may be somewhere, maybe in Maine, maybe elsewhere. So we'll talk all of that. I got to Summer League on day 1, so this is Friday. I got here last Thursday, and I'm truly happy to talk about all these things. So feel free to put in questions, and I'm also going to discuss kind of my observations. I think the big question that everybody had going into Summer League is which of these guys is going to be a rotation player? And I think the 3 guys that everybody has in mind are the 3, top draft picks that Brad Stevens has selected over the past 3 seasons. Jordan Walsh in 2023, Baylor Scheierman in 2024, and Ugo Gonzalez in 2025. The latter 2 being first-round picks. Jordan Walsh selected 38th. None of them have really played a ton of NBA minutes. Obviously, Ugo has yet to make his NBA debut. And so these past 4 games has been an opportunity to see how 3 forwards who have slightly different skill sets, but also some overlapping skills, kind of stack up. And I think they had 3 different experiences here. And so we'll talk about all of that today. Before we get started, please do subscribe to the You Got Boston podcast on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And I'll continue to have coverage here on the ground over the next couple of days. Subscribe to CLNS Media. We've been doing a post-game show after every game, regardless of the time, regardless of who's playing, we will be on. I was on with Gary Washburn and Sherrod Blakely yesterday after the Celtics beat the Lakers. That was a fun game. And you can also check out a lot of our other coverage, podcasts, pressers, all of that. So any off-season content. This has been a pretty busy off-season. I don't feel like I've honestly had much of an off-season. I spent last week at Jaylen Brown's youth camp at Bridge. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a separate episode, so you can check that out. But today is going to be mostly Summer League focused. And if you're still here after 4 games of Summer League, you're extra locked in. So I appreciate you being here. I know a lot of people are getting really excited about game 1, maybe game 2, and then it kind of goes down. But the Celtics have kept playing all of their guys. A lot of teams have already shut down their actual rostered players. But they haven't. They have their 5th game on Sunday against the Hawks. We'll see if that actually happens and, who actually plays in these games. There are 8 guys in the roster that are not on a 2-way and that don't have a standard contract with the Celtics. So those are the guys that usually get a little bit more of an opportunity in game 5. So, maybe we'll see guys like Kenny Lofton get more opportunities, Isaiah Wong, who's, had some ball handling responsibilities, but then also other guys that we haven't seen really at all, like Hayden Gray and, Zach Hicks, Ben Gregg, like those guys that are kind of at the bottom half of the roster who have still been here for the full experience. So that's probably what we'll get on Sunday. And yeah, I do apologize. I have been slacking on the getting at the podcast front. It's been a very, very busy week. And honestly, really hard to find a place to podcast, but that's no excuse. We've been doing our post game. So this is going to be a little bit of a makeup episode. So any questions you've had over the last week, we can do them here today. So I'm going to start at the top with the player that I think has been most impressive so far. And probably most of you agree. And that's Jordan Walsh, who is in his 3rd Summer League. He also is just a couple months older than 21. He turned 21 in March. So he's in his 3rd Summer League, but he's also still really young. And there are a lot of players that are, 2-3 years older than him that are also competing in Summer League right now. Jordan hasn't been mind-blowing, overwhelming, wow, he's so amazing. I think, obviously it'd be fun if there was one player that we could say, this guy just absolutely destroyed the competition at Summer League. That hasn't really been the case for any of the Celtics. But Jordan averaging 15 points per game, shooting 46.3% from the field, 38.9% from 3. He's appeared in all 4 games, so he's not one of the guys that's gotten a rest day. But I will say he did get ejected. For those of you that watched Game 3 versus the Miami Heat, he got ejected in the first half. That also was the Celtics' only loss. So they have been better when he's been on the floor. I think defensively he's been better. Just seeing him play within himself. Everybody remembers last year Summer League. He really, really struggled. That story has kind of been beaten to the ground, so I won't relive the whole thing, but he talked about how he really wanted to be like the Tatum or the Brown of Summer League, and he just wasn't that. And in turn, he had like a really, really difficult, offensive stretch there for the first 4 games. Jordan looks a lot better now. He's a year older. I think he has the experience of like, this is what happens when you force the issue at Summer League. And he has found a way to like hit his threes, play good defense, be aggressive. He talks a lot of trash, which is something that I honestly didn't realize about him quite to this extent. But at Summer League, we get to sit like right next to the bench and right next to the court, and that has really stood out for me. But of the 3 young, prospects the Celtics have at the wing position, he's the guy that's had the best Summer League so far. And that doesn't mean that he is without a doubt going to be the guy that carves out real NBA rotation minutes, because we already know you can have an awesome Summer League and be terrible, or vice versa. Sam Hauser in his second year couldn't hit a shot, and we all know he went on to be a great NBA shooter. Players like Trae Young, Al Horford, even Wemby didn't have a good Summer League. So it's, on one hand, I'm here, and obviously I think it matters, but at the same time, you put an asterisk on all of this stuff, good and bad. But for Jordan, this has been a good 4 games. I don't know if he's going to have any more games left in this run here. The Celtics are 3-1, but they did not make the playoffs because you have to be undefeated to make the playoffs. And even if you undefeated teams, did not make it actually. But generally speaking, I've really liked what we've seen out of him. And it's just, it hasn't been, he hasn't been like, again, like I said, like spectacular, but I think this is what you want to see. The question is, how is that going to translate to Maine? So thank you for the super chat, the Happy Hour Network. I actually didn't even realize that I had super chats on for this podcast, so thank you. 3-and-D modern. I see a role for Walsh. 3-and-D modern Tony Allen plus 3 ball, 16 plus to 22 minutes. Love the length. That I think is the vision. With some of these guys, you draft them because you hope that one day can all come together and they can be a borderline all-star. Jordan, I don't think that necessarily is the role, but sometimes it's actually easier to play in the NBA because the spacing's better. You have more talent around you. The game's a little bit more slowed down, a little bit more controlled. So I don't necessarily think that Summer League has been like the best fit for any of these guys. Like there's a challenge that's posed with playing in this environment. But in a best case scenario, I do think he becomes a 3-and-D player. He's shooting well right now, as I said, 38% from 3. He shot well in the G League. In the NBA, he has not shot well, but it's also been such a small sample that it's just really hard to draw anything from that. But again, he's going to have to hit them in the NBA for it to really matter, right? So we'll see. But yeah, he does talk a lot of trash. That was the biggest thing that I noticed. Just sitting courtside, it's a huge part of his personality. He told us after the game that he talks trash to Jaylen Brown at practice oftentimes. J.D. Davison is a big guy he talks trash to. But he's a fun-loving guy. I think he is, having a really good time being here, which some guys you can tell, like they're kind of like, oh, I'm a third-year player. I wish I wasn't playing in Summer League. And that translates to their persona on the floor. That hasn't been the case with Jordan. Like Jordan, I think he has no issue at all with playing Summer League. He's having a good time. He's playing hard. The ejection was kind of a stain on his otherwise really strong stretch here. He would be averaging more points too, because one of those games got cut off, in the first half. But the ejection, actually, I watched Joe Mazzulla walk over from the bleacher to Jordan Walsh, and I was like, is he going over there to congratulate him after he got ejected? This is after the Celtics' only loss so far of Summer League. And so I asked Jordan about it post-game, and he was like, yeah, Joe loved it. He texted me that he was hype. And he said, I don't know what to make of that. You guys make of that what you will. He said, I don't know if Brad loved it. I apologize to Brad. I told Brad that I'm more professional than that. So, that's kind of a Joe Mazzulla thing. Jordan came on the Garden Report a couple weeks ago. You can watch that full interview if you're curious. But he said on the Garden Report that Joe's always trying to fight him, actually. So it was kind of in character that Joe liked the ejection. I'm sure some people that doesn't sit well, some people it does. But yeah, so curious to hear what you guys think about Jordan. Feel free if you have any Jordan-specific questions, put them in the chat. I know some people are going to feel like he's really improved. Other people feel like, hey, if he's playing in the third, someone here said this, if he's playing in year 3, it's hard to imagine him contributing to an NBA team. Certainly doesn't stack the odds in your favors. I mean, the more you're not an NBA player, like the longer you spend in the G League, the longer you're on a two-way, like those are factors that's, stack up against you. But at the same time, like, we're here to watch these guys develop, and some of these guys are going to break out. And at the same time, some of the guys that have been really, really dominant in Summer League, like Drew Timme has been probably the best player here, or one of the best players here. He might not end up being a great NBA player. So it is like a slightly different league with slightly different factors that kind of what makes players successful. But overall, definitely a lot better. We will see if he's a rotation player. Obviously, that's the big question. I think that that's his goal. There are opportunities now that there just weren't last year, that weren't the previous year. And he understands the system. He understands how to be a professional. I think he came in really young and like acted young and seemed young. He was 19. A young 19 too. Like he just turned 19 when he was drafted. So we'll see if he's able to kind of make the most of it and kind of find a way to break through that's different from how the last couple of years have gone for him. Then I move on to Baylor, who has had a tough summer league. And for those of you that are here, I'm assuming it's because you've been watching the games, and so you already know this. But Baylor, averaging 12.3 points per game. He's shooting 20.5% from three. Most of his shots are threes. I think he's like 27% or so from the field. He has been distributing, rebounding, 6.8 assists, 5.3 rebounds. But the shot has just not been falling. And this is, for those of you that know me and have listened to me talk about a lot of Celtics related things, you probably know what I'm going to say. I don't ever overreact to a small sample in shooting, which at the end of the day, this is still 4 games. And so I thought Baylor had a really strong second half of the year with Boston. He looked really good in the G League. He looked really good in March when he came up to Boston. He didn't get opportunities in the playoffs, which was kind of expected considering just the situation and the stakes and all of that. But I was like, Baylor is going to have an awesome summer league. If you had asked me 2 weeks ago, which I think we did some shows on this, Baylor averaged 20 points per game. That's what I would have predicted. Shooting 40% from three, being one of those like really developed players. So that's what I expected. And this might sound kind of crazy, but I actually don't think that that's totally off base because he has looked pretty good. He just hasn't hit his shots. And at the end of the day, there's only so much you can do in the NBA if your shots aren't falling and you're supposed to be a shot maker. And that's certainly one of the roles that he has on this team. He was drafted because he could shoot, among other things. He knows that. It's why he's here. He was talking about the fact that he has been making shots his whole life. That's why he got to the place that he is. And so he's not going to now freak out because he missed 4 shots. So that's what he said. I actually posted the clip on Twitter, so you can find it on my Twitter if you really want to watch it. But basically, he is not concerned over a couple game stretch because at the end of the day, these guys are like, I was drafted. I had a great college career. I hit shots in the NBA, like because I shoot threes, right? It's not like somebody they've been trying to learn how to shoot and like they're not breaking through. Like he already feels like he's in that position that he feels like he's a proven shooter. I know a lot of people don't feel that way because you haven't seen it in a large sample. So I'm not overly concerned about it. Obviously, the shot has to fall. But I go back and I think about like Peyton Pritchard, at the beginning of the championship season. I don't know if you guys remember this, but right after he signed that extension, which now is one of the best bargain contracts in the NBA, Baylor shot, Peyton Pritchard could not hit a shot. And like he was still on the floor because Joe Mazzulla was like, you do other things, but he could not hit a shot. He really couldn't. And so at the end of the day, like he got out of that, and last year he was one of the most efficient guard shot makers in the NBA. Is that what Baylor is going to be? I don't think he's a pure shooter the way that Peyton is, the way that Sam is, but that's where he's working toward. So we'll see how we'll see how preseason goes. We'll see how the beginning of the year goes. Like I'm not walking away like, wow, he really showed us that he's ready for the next step. But at the same time, I'm just not going to overreact to it. And I think that the one thing that I don't know how much it translates to viewers at home versus on TV. And I'm not, I understand nobody wants to hear about intangibles and like, people want to see real production right now. It's Summer League and, these guys matter. And next year they're going to have an opportunity. But I watch a ton of basketball, right? Like I watch basketball games all day, every day, this entire week. And most of the year, it's my job. Usually when a guy is struggling, they are not hitting their shots. Usually when a guy's not hitting their shots, the struggles start to stretch to everything else. Their body language is bad. Their defense slides. On the bench, you see them getting frustrated. It's human nature. It's okay. And everybody kind of does it. Like Sam Hauser, when he misses some shots, you can see he's putting his head down. He's like exasperated. I think Baylor made a point going into Summer League that he was going to play really, really hard and dive on the floor and throw, set up his teammates and be engaged and all those things, regardless of whether or not the shots are falling. And there have been few times in my life that I've seen a player sustain like their focus and intensity and attitude and all these things as well as he has throughout this past week, despite being in such a bad shooting slump. So that's a point for him. Some people might say like, hey, that's stupid. I don't really care about his, how his attitude has been. I want him to make shots. And I get that. But from where I sit, like that's the stuff I'm looking for because I'm at these games so I can see the things that are not just on the box score. And that is like, has been really, really standing out to me, just kind of how he has managed to stay like in it and not let the misses kind of pile up and affect his other impact. And I still think that he's been pretty impactful for this team, despite the fact that clearly he's just not, putting up points the way that you expected him to. And I think there was only really one game where he was even, I think, found any rhythm offensively. That was the game that they lost against Miami. But we'll see. Maybe he gets a fifth game here. I would imagine Jordan and Baylor probably both are done for Summer League. We'll see that for sure. Celtics play on Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific, so 6 p.m. Eastern time against the Hawks. Tomorrow they have practice, and we'll get a better sense tomorrow practice of who's playing and all of that. Just a quick message before we continue from our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks is the best place to win cash while watching sports. Join millions of users and sign up today. On PrizePicks, you can mix and match player projections from different sports, combine your favorite basketball players with players from baseball, hockey, esports, and much more. PrizePicks invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports takes into real money all season long on PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So just wanted to talk about Ugo Gonzalez because I think that he's the player that probably there were the most expectations around heading into Summer League. There were not most expectations or most anticipation just because he is the Celtics first round pick this year. Hardly anybody knew anything about him. You can let me know if that's not accurate, but as I was looking at potential prospects, this is not the guy I thought they were going to go with. I thought that for sure they were going to select a kind of NBA ready-ish big, one of those guys that was on the board, Ryan Kalkbrenner or Rasheer Fleming or whoever else it might be. And they go with kind of a wild card pick who I've talked about on previous episodes of this podcast, Ugo Gonzalez, who is a 19-year-old out of Real Madrid, who has barely played, really any at all in the last year. He was, just playing a couple minutes a night for that pro team. They win the Spanish league. That same night, he gets the call that he's been drafted to join the Boston Celtics. And he comes over right away, and it's pretty much been go, go, go ever since. So he's appeared in 3 games here in Vegas. He got 1 rest day on, I think it was the second night of a back-to-back or first night of a back-to-back. And so far, I think it's, there's been a little bit of ups and downs for Ugo, averaging 11.7 points per game. He's actually shot pretty well from 3, 37.5%. You'll take that, especially because he's not supposed to be a great 3-point shooter at this point. Like, that's not necessarily what his thing is. But certainly has been turning the ball over a little bit higher than you would like, which has kind of been the theme for a lot of these kind of like raw playmakers who are on the younger side, who have upside. Like, this is not exclusive to Ugo. So 3.7 turnovers a game. The field goal percentage is not great, 31.4% from the field. There are moments where you're like, this guy is exactly what they pitched him to be. When he crashes the offensive glass and lays it back in, or he's just navigating screens, or he's just playing really hard. Like, there are these moments where you're like, okay, I kind of see the vision. I've heard the Manu Ginobili comparison for him as like, that's an incredible player. So that's a lofty comparison, but like kind of going in that direction, having that type of role with, the cutting, the ball in your hand, all of these things. But to me, he's looked overwhelmed, and like, not even like in a basketball sense, but it went 0 to 100 for him. Like, he gets drafted, he comes overseas, he does a couple days in Boston getting acclimated, immediately comes to Vegas. He was talking yesterday about like he's going in the hotel and he's walking through casinos and he's like, what is this? And it's like, obviously we all know that that's not anything to do with his experience in Boston, but it's just been a lot, like a big culture shock, right? A lot of these guys know a million people at Summer League from their high school teams and college teams and everything, and he doesn't have nearly as much. But he seems like he's having a really good time. He's been joking around a lot with his teammates, with his coaches. Craig Lucianet, who is the head of player development for the Celtics, somebody that I've seen him spend a lot of time with. They were playing like Pop-A-Shot yesterday after practice, and they're always kind of teasing each other, joking around. So that's like one friendship that I've been able to kind of see. Max Shulga, who I won't talk about too much today, but he was their 57th pick, the Celtics, and presumably he'll be one of the two-way players. Max Shulga and him have been speaking in Spanish. Max speaks like 5 languages, including Russian, Ukrainian, English, Spanish. I might be missing one. Maybe it's 4. But those two guys have had a little bit of a friendship coming in as rookies, being able to communicate in a different language on the floor. But I think Ugo is going to take a little bit of time. He's going to spend a little bit of time in Maine. There's going to be some struggles for him. There's going to be a little bit of an acclimation. You could tell that there were moments where like the physicality, the quickness, like he was just like having to adjust like his thought process, and he was making decisions at a little bit of a slower pace. So I do think he looks a little bit rushed. Is it going to work out for him? I definitely have no sense after 3 games, like what his career trajectory is going to look like. But I do think that you can see that he's very professional, that you can see that he really cares. He has been really, really hard on himself after tough games. So he was really disappointed that he went 1 for 5 from the free throw line in game 1. He was really disappointed that he struggled a lot in game 3. Like, he was really down on himself. You would have thought he just lost game 7 of the NBA Finals. Like, I almost wanted to be like, Ugo, like, it's okay. It's just a Summer League game. But not my job. But I do think that you can see right now that this has just been a lot for him. And I don't think he'll play again. I think these 3 games are probably it. He wasn't even sure if he was going to play. Like, initially, I think that, he had just finished the Real Madrid Stevens. Brad Stevens said it, on draft night. I don't know if he's going to play or kind of what the situation is. And he seems like he's a really good teammate. So, like, all 3 of these guys, again, being a good teammate, being, energetic and having a good work ethic and caring a lot, like, that's not going to give you an NBA career single-handedly. But it's clear that it's something the Celtics value because all 3 of these guys are that. I've spent a lot of time watching them in action, watching them in practice, at shoot around, interacting with one another, interacting with us. These are really fun guys that have great personalities, that seem to be really easygoing, great teammates, very coachable, all of these things. So I've had a lot of fun talking to him. We did an interview with him in Spanish. You can check it out. Me and Bobby did one. We tried to do some Spanish. Bobby and I are neither one of us are very good at Spanish, but we tried our best. So you can watch that. You can also watch. He's done a bunch of pressers over the last couple of days. So if you want to get to know him a little bit more, he's actually pretty comfortable answering questions and just joking around with us. I think it's because he has a lot of pro experience being in Real Madrid and talking to the media. And in Real Madrid, like, the expectations are really high. There's a lot of eyes on you. So he's used to that. And I asked him yesterday, like, did you know you wanted to go to America, like, right away? You're 19 years old. Like, 'cause in my head, it's like, this is a great place to play. This is the kind of thing where he's been dreaming. He's from Madrid. He's been dreaming of playing for Real Madrid his whole life. Like, why not give it a few years? But he said he was always going to go when he felt ready. But at the end of the day, like, he just signed a guaranteed contract, and obviously has opportunities to make it over here, and was a first-round draft pick. And I talked to a lot of people here at Summer League. A lot of people think this guy's going to be really, really good. Like, not that like the word on the street at Summer League always is the biggest indicator of things, but it's very obvious to me that this guy, nobody was like, why would they pick him at 28? Everybody was kind of thinking he almost slid a little bit longer than teams expected. So we'll see. I actually don't see Manu at all either. I said Manu because that's one of the players that he's referenced as being kind of somebody that he looks up to. I asked a bunch of guys who are your, like, NBA, not comparisons, but, like, if you're watching film, you're getting in the film room, who are you studying? Like, who are you modeling your game off of? And sometimes guys don't like answering that question because it makes them, like, they don't really want that comparison out there because they're probably never going to be that player. But I'll just run quickly, like, the ones that people gave me. Miles Norris, who has had a pretty pretty nice summer league here, had some good moments. He said he's been studying Michael Porter Jr. Offensively, Robert Covington as well on the defensive end, being like a defensive playmaker. Amari Williams said Nikola Jokic. So you can watch, and again, all these pressers are on CLNS Media, so you can watch kind of more extensively in their own words. But Nikola Jokic, he was a point guard growing up. He loved Derrick Rose, and he, when he got taller, now he's been studying Jokic, Sabonis, kind of these playmaking European bigs, and he's from the UK, so I don't know if there's any connection there. And then Max Shulga had an interesting comparison that I've seen people online say, but he's been studying. Who did he say? Oh, Dante DiVincenzo, which obviously Dante DiVincenzo, a little bit more athletic, can jump a little higher, a little stronger. But hey, if you're picking one of these guys that's in the NBA that's had a good career, like they're probably gonna have things that you don't have right now, so you have to figure out how to get there. So I'll keep asking. I'm always curious to see what they say. It's not like they can be that guy, or they're going to be that exact player. Like there are no two players in the NBA that are the same ultimately. But when they're watching film, like I'm always curious, who are you watching? Because you're probably not watching Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown film, right? So we'll see. And Shulga, I haven't seen a ton from yet. I think that he has been pretty quiet on both ends. He is really stone-faced. Like you can tell he's super locked in. He's probably one of the best ball handlers on this team. And then Amari Williams, I think he's really struggled through the games that he's played. It looks to me like this, and this has not been confirmed, so I don't want to like start anything, but he kept getting like stretched and worked out, and I think he might be dealing with some like knee pain or something. I don't know if there's anything to be concerned about, but that seems like in my vantage point, like that could be slowing him down. But he's also looked a little bit hesitant around the basket, both rebounding and finishing. So the passing, it's beautiful. Like we all know about the passing now. Obviously, he's going to need to do a whole lot more than just pass. But both of those guys were late second-round picks for a reason. Both of those guys are going to be two ways at first. They're going to start in Maine, and we'll see what the process is to kind of get them acclimated to Boston. And maybe eventually one of those guys becomes an impact player in the Celtics. Maybe they don't, but it's a two-way contract. It's not a big deal anyways. I will just say that Drew Peterson, who I know some of you guys remember, I mean, actually probably anybody that's watching a Friday night Summer League recap podcast knows Drew Peterson, but Drew Peterson was the Celtics two-way player for the last year and a half. He was basically going to be not get a two-way contract because if you remember, the 32nd pick became 2 second-round picks, the 46th and the 57th, which means now you have 2 second-round picks that need two ways. Miles Norris is already guaranteed for this year. He signed a 2-year two-way contract. So basically, long story short, Drew Peterson was not going to have a contract available in Boston, most likely. So he was not in any Summer League roster. I was concerned that for him, that he was going to find himself out of the league and maybe have to go overseas or something. But he does get an opportunity to go to Charlotte, and he signs a two-way contract there under Charles Lee, who you guys remember is lead assistant for the championship team, and Blaine Miller, who was the main Celtics head coach in Drew Peterson's first year. He's an assistant over there. So if you like Drew Peterson, if you were hopeful about his game, you can continue to follow his career over in Charlotte. If you want to hear more from Drew, we had him on the show a couple weeks ago on CLNS Media, so check that out. I mean, he's not on the team anymore, but he's a nice guy. He was one of my first interviews that I did when I was covering the Celtics is when he signed a two-way contract. I DM'd him on Twitter, and he was down to talk. So that was before I knew how to get interviews. So nice guy. I think he showed some good flashes, but never really shown through in Boston. And ultimately, like if you're with the Celtics for 1-2 years, like you're eventually not going to, you're not going to be a two-way for 3 years very often. JD Davison, what he's done, where he's been a two-way player for one organization for 3 seasons, that is so unusual. And talking to people around the league, nobody really knows what they're going to do with JD. He's on a non-guaranteed contract next year. Was not on the Summer League team. That would have been his 4th Summer League, so it's a little excessive. But he might go elsewhere. I don't think he's been working out at the Auerbach Center. At least I hadn't heard that he has been. So if you look at he's been working out elsewhere. Like maybe there's other opportunities that could open up for him. But I'm not sure. I don't have a strong sense right now, one way or another, whether he's going to be on the roster next year and if he's a part of their future guard rotation and plans and things. So that's just like my initial thoughts on some of the players. I did want to get into the thing that I found most interesting about the Summer League, and that is Matt Reynolds, the Celtics Summer League head coach. He is the Celtics' longest tenured assistant, if you count from like when he got hired, which was an internship in 2013. Matt has been one of my favorite assistants to talk to since I started covering the team. So I was really excited on a personal level when he was named Summer League head coach because Usually the way that it works with the Celtics is you can't interview coaches on the record unless they're the head coach, or the head coach of the main Celtics, or the head coach of the Summer League team. So there are 3 coaches in a given year that you can get on the record. And if they're not one of those guys, you're probably out of luck unless there's like a very specific reason why you need to get to talk to them. So I'm going to drop this story here. If you are a reader, you can check it out as I talk. You can also just check it out later. I had a lot of fun writing this. I interviewed Matt for about 20 minutes talking about his upbringing and how he landed here. The thing that's cool for you guys to know, for those of you that are not going to read the whole thing, first of all, I'll say I think a lot of fans feel a little bit disappointed with the Summer League so far because none of these guys has broken through as like, wow, Jordan's been on fire, Baylor's been on fire, Ugo, Amari. Like, I don't think there's one player that you could be like, wow, he has been insane. I will say, quick asterisk, that Charles Bassey has been probably one of the team's best players, and he's not on the roster anymore. He only played the first 3 games. And Charles Bassey, that's no surprise. I talked to some people, agents, scouts, that knew this was coming. So I knew this was coming before the team announced it. He basically was never going to play the whole thing. And I think that this was just more of a showcase for him. So that's why there was not a lot of like discussion around him coming into this team. Nobody even really knew he was going to play for this team. So I know everybody loved Charles Bassey. Does not look right now like his future is going to be in Boston unless something were to change. But he was never going to play all of Summer League. So nothing went wrong. But going back to Matt. So fans want to see the players go off. But at the end of the day, this team has had a lot of success. They've beaten teams that have had better players on paper. Like they opened up with a win over the Memphis Grizzlies, who had Jalen Wells, who was one of the best rookies last year, who had J.G. Jackson, guys that have gotten a lot of NBA opportunities. This is cool. Somebody here says, I went to high school with Matt, same grad class. What's crazy is he didn't play hoops in high school. So for him to make it out of all of that, out of all of us that hooped, big shout out to him. So that's kind of what my story is about. So check it out on Celtics blog. I do want to play a couple clips because I think a lot of people know Matt Reynolds is the guy who does the timeout challenges for Joe Mazzulla. And that's kind of what I knew him as initially. He always has an iPad on the bench. So if you think about it, like going from being the guy that has an iPad on the bench who can rewatch plays and decide if, you need to point something out to the other coaches, or if you want to, make a challenge, timeout, those kinds of things. Matt Reynolds is the guy that does that. He's in a completely different position now. So he is standing on the sidelines and communicating with players directly. He's been yelling a lot. I asked him, like, did you know if you were going to be a yeller or not? Because it's like, you don't actually know what kind of head coach you're going to be. He's never been a head coach before. He, as somebody here, as the commenter here said, he did not ever play competitive basketball, but he loved sports. He grew up in Lexington, Mass, and he always knew that he wanted to play in sports. He wanted to work in sports. And I think a lot of people have that thought, and it's just really hard to make it in. And I asked him at the beginning of camp, like, just a little bit about his background. I knew he was a Celtics fan, but this is just him talking about how he kind of came into this.
I know you're from Lexington and you grew up, I think, a Celtics fan. Could you share a little bit more about your upbringing and just like Joe kind of has that, having that local background and what it means to now be a head coach ultimately for this group?
Yeah, no, it's very special. It's been special to work for this team, since I got here. And so I don't take a single day for granted. I remember I got to go to one game in the old Garden, and that's like, I don't remember a whole lot about the game. But it was like little moments like that where, like, childhood, you're going to a game, the Garden. I didn't know, what it meant at the time, but then, going to games at the Fleet Center, TD Garden, all that stuff, like it coming up as a Celtics fan. I remember the day I got the job, it was just like a pinch me moment. And then, since then, every single day I wake up so excited to come here, and, to have this opportunity is just another thing that I'm incredibly grateful for.
Yeah, so we talked a lot throughout the summer league. Like when you're here for a week, you get to talk to these guys almost every day. So one of my biggest, objectives was, yes, I want to cover the players. I want to cover Ugo and Jordan and Baylor, and I've talked to all those guys a bunch of times, and we'll continue to do so. But I also really wanted to get to know Matt, who is one of the lead assistants for Joe Mazzulla and who is the longest tenured assistant. And he has also been around since 2013 when he got the internship. Funny story that he shared is that he got the internship after he graduated from Syracuse. He was the basketball team manager there. He did not have a job. He was doing a volunteer coaching at Woburn High School. Those of you from the area recognize some of these talents. He's from Lexington. And basically he knew a guy who was a video coordinator through his sister's friend. So his sister's friend made a connection for them, and the Celtics had an intern hired for the film room, but something fell through, so they needed somebody last minute. Matt got the job. He had no NBA film experience, but the job was basically just cutting film. It's something that today you don't even have to have a person do. It was just an automatic, now it's something that you can just use like ChatGPT or artificial intelligence to just do for you. But he got the job, and once he got it, he was like, "This is my dream come true. I'm a huge Celtics fan." Like, imagine as a Celtics fan, you have no experience with NBA film, you just love being around sports, and you get this opportunity to do this very basic internship. But obviously, he made the most of it and kind of went from there. And he actually has a photographic memory. A lot of people told me that when I asked him about whether he has a photographic memory. He was like, "I don't know if it's photographic, but it's really good." And then he proceeded to like point out multiple things that we had discussed about a year ago, that I had no recollection of. And I think I have a pretty good long-term memory, but I had no recollection of any of this. So I was able to see in action just how good his recollection is. And with Matt, when you're, as far as memory goes, like he can remember a specific play and pull it up right away. And he does that with Joe. And, it makes your life so much easier when you're like, what was that screen? Or what was that time where Tatum was supposed to pass, but, where Jalen turned the ball over, and like he can pull up that play right away. And so that's been a huge asset for him. But above the fact that he's a fan, above the fact that he is really, really intelligent, obviously, and super prepared, he came into the Summer League and he said that, he really wanted this to be a very enjoyable experience. And again, I think that's why they've been winning games, despite the fact that a lot of these guys are individually struggling and like acclimating and all of that. And I asked Ugo about it yesterday because Ugo, as you guys have seen on television, he's been getting down on himself. Here's what he's had to say about just Matt and the environment around him.
Baylor was saying that Matt has created a culture of joy around this team. Have you felt that? Like you guys are trying to have fun, or like what behind the scenes, is that what it's felt like?
Of course, that's what we try to do. Anytime we're off the court, we're trying to have a great feeling. I mean, it's nothing that we have to try to do because it's something that is coming natural. And then when we're going on the court, everyone is focused and knowing what we have to do. So yeah, probably having on both sides the best.
What are the ways that Matt has made it like feel like have fun? Like, can you see something he's saying? Are you guys like playing games? Like, how is that?
It was something like really different from what I was used to, because I remember the first and the third game, the ones that I played, he was telling me like at the end of the quarter sometimes like, "Are you having fun?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm having fun." And he told me, "I'm having a lot of fun right now." So I think that's a lesson that he's telling me right now. Like, when I have fun is how better player I am.
Yeah, and so if Derek White, and Derek has had this big thing over the last year or so, that there's moments where Derek White has lost his joy for this team. I've talked about it. I've asked players about it. But when you're that kind of player that needs to play and like have this joyful feeling around you, it's really important to like stay in that space, right? And Matt is Derek White's go-to guy. I see it every practice, every shoot around. Derek does this trick shot thing. I'm sure you guys have seen it on Twitter or on social media, where he has some challenge that him and all the assistant coaches have to accomplish, whether it's like bouncing a ball off the ceiling and into the basket or something crazy like that. Matt Reynolds is the leader of that experiment, that challenge. So I think he's taking in Ugo in a similar fashion. Jordan Walsh also talked yesterday about I asked him yesterday about kind of the tone that he has set. And just, Jordan's now seen him as an assistant for the last 2 years. So it's cool for him too, to get that experience, to see Matt as a head coach for the first time.
Are there ways in your eyes that he's done that? Is it just his personality? Is it like little things you guys have talked about?
I think, I really think a big part of it is his spirit. He's super competitive, and usually he's not a guy who's like, super vocal or like super like yelling and like all that. He's usually the guy that's, behind the scenes, and stuff like that. But just have him come out and see how happy he is and excited he is. He's jumping around screaming. I've never heard him scream before. So he's jumping around and screaming, and it's just, for me, it lights a fire under me personally. But I think that's a big part of it for everybody.
So yeah, that's just some of the guys talking about what it's been like to play for Matt Reynolds. I think he's going to be around for a long time. Obviously, coaches shuffle in and out. You see coaches are always looking for their next opportunity. They want to move up in the world. And I think Matt, because he's from here and he grew up a fan, it's not that he would never go anywhere else, but he's clearly like, when all of Ime Udoka's assistants went with him to Houston, Matt stayed. Like, Matt's coach under Brad Stevens. He was the special assistant to Brad Stevens. He then became an assistant coach to Ime Udoka, and he's been one of Joe Mazzulla's lead assistants over the last few years. He also said that about a year and a half ago, he was told he was going to have this opportunity. So he knew going into last year's Summer League that he was going to be in this position, and he gave him a chance. And like, it really is yeah, it really has been a really, really nice environment. I think for a lot of these guys, as they're acclimating, draft picks, all of these things, like, it's hard. You have a lot of pressure on you. You want to be great, and there's an adjustment period. And most of these guys have been struggling, right? Like, outside of Jordan, I think like all of these guys have been struggling in one way or another. And so they've still found ways to win games. And, ultimately, yes, nobody really cares all that much about the Celtics Summer League record. But last night they beat a Lakers team that was pretty good, and Bronny James was pretty good and all that, because despite the fact that individually guys aren't necessarily hitting that many shots, they found a way to collectively play really hard, play really together. And I do think Matt Reynolds deserves a little bit of shine, a little bit of spotlight for that. And if you want to know more, you want to hear a little bit more about Matt Reynolds and his story, you can read the entire feature on Celtics blog. And I have a lot of quotes and things, and he talked a little bit about his upbringing as well, and just managing the basketball team and all that. And it's kind of a remarkable story. I think there's less and less coaches that come out of the film room. Eric Spoelstra of the Heat is a very prominent example, but most of these guys have played at least in college, if not the NBA. Joe Mazzulla talks all the time about how, he didn't play in the NBA, and that's something that he kind of has to overcome. But he was not in that position. So Matt has kind of found ways around that. And he said, if you're prepared and you ask and you're honest, then players will respect you. And I've talked to almost every player here, and they all very much respect him. So that's a little bit about Matt. You can read the entire story on Celtics blog. But I just wanted to talk a little bit about him. I know that he's a guy, I think they call him on the broadcast through the Green Lantern. I think everybody has heard his name, seen his face. And obviously he's getting a bigger opportunity here. So I appreciate you all for indulging me there. As always, please subscribe to the You Got Boston podcast on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, whatever else it is. CLNS Media, we have a lot of content. We still have a lot of content coming up here in the next couple of days. Post-game shows. I have an episode about Jaylen Brown. I had a long conversation with Jaylen last week, published in 2 different stories, and then also some stuff that didn't even make it into the story that will be coming out later this summer. But just how he's feeling going into next year. So that'll be coming out soon. A lot of podcasts, the Big 3 podcast, my podcast, You Got Boston, CLNS Media will have a post-game show on Sunday as well. So keep your eyes peeled, turn on notifications so you can join live for all of these things. But as always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you have things you want me to focus on, you can always message me on Twitter. And I'm happy to make sure we get some coverage over the next few weeks. I think things are going to slow down here. So it's been a crazy offseason so far. A lot of turnover. The new Celtics players that signed as free agents, Luka Garza, Josh Minot, they both signed this summer as well. So you can hear they talked to us at Summer League at one of the halftimes of one of the recent games. So you can watch those videos on CLNS. But thank you all. Oh, sorry. Is there a question that I need to answer? I thought you ignored my questions. Okay. Sometimes I don't know if you guys are debating back and forth with each other, and if I read along, then I lose my train of thought. But what is the point of getting all these undrafted free agents if they're not going to play? It's not that they're not going to play. It's that I think in recent years, those guys were signed because they were going to be like insurance. Like if something were to go wrong, then maybe Torrey Craig would play. But you have to have buy-in from the head coach ultimately, right? You have to have Joe Mazzulla's buy-in to trust those guys. So I think a lot of what we know to be true about Joe as a coach and his willingness to trust younger players is going to be out the window next year, because everything's different. You're no longer worried about no margin of error, competing for a championship, all of that. So I do think this year we're going to see Joe, I hope, and I do think it's going to happen. You're going to see guys play through mistakes in a way that we just haven't seen over the past few years under Joe. So this is going to be his 4th year as head coach. It's kind of wow. That's a long time. And we'll get a sense of that, whether that's true. Maybe he's going to have to kind of get more comfortable watching guys make mistakes. But I do think Luka Garza, Josh Minot, they're going to get chances on the floor. We'll see, though. Maybe I'm wrong, but that is my understanding right now. And Luka said, they wanted me here. They don't have a lot of bigs right now. So if they don't trust Luka Garza, and Amari Williams is going to be in Maine to start, I think Neemias Queta is not going to play 48 minutes a night, right? So they're going to have to trust these guys. That's kind of the difference between this year and previous years where, hey, Nemi, you made a couple mistakes. We have Al Horford, Kristaps Porzingis, and Luke Kornet on the bench, and they're going to make less mistakes than you. That's just the way that it's been. So I think it's going to change. But if I miss any other questions, I apologize. But we're going to wrap up right here. Thank you as always, and I hope you enjoyed the show.